its implication on thought and life. So we are excited. We are looking forward for the third class tonight. In Malaysia, we are already celebrating Idul Adha. Now it's all past 1 hour already, Isha time, almost half an hour Isha time. So, Alhamdulillah. So let me take this opportunity early on this class to wish everyone Idul Adha Mubarak. With all the sadness around us, we're still celebrating this important day in Islam. In fact, Hajj is very, very significant in our life. We still remember our dear Professor Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, whenever he gave a lecture, because he is from Makkah, he was born in Makkah. So he said Hajj is something that is very, very significant in a Muslim history, in a Muslim psyche, Muslim worldview. He always compared that everyone is equal, doesn't matter where you're coming from. So, Prof, all yours. Please go ahead with our class.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Shahran. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I also would like to take this opportunity to wish everyone from all parts of the world Eid al-Adha Mubarak for this year, 1442 or 2021. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us and protect us from all the undesirable happenings and other things. The spirit of Eid al-Adha certainly is broad enough to be embraced. We believe that especially in this situation, what we call sacrifice will have to have many dimensions so as to keep ourselves not only survive, to survive, but also to make sure that we are surviving in the way that is blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is a need for us to be having a high perseverance and all these things. So we ask Allah to help us keep our life moving despite the challenges. Business as usual, we continue our discussion. For tonight, we have the third lecture. This is weekly online classes. I just bring here the screenshot of the posted YouTube, so Islam and Sociology, which has been posted by the organizer online. So the subject is Islam and Sociology. I change here a little bit in order to reflect that as we are reaching certain stage of our learning of this subject, by now we should be able to understand that for Muslims, the Quran is the ultimate reference source for us, which gives us the lights, the insights, the ideas, the inspirations, all these have been combined under the name guidance. So Al-Quran is the guiding source, the source that guides us to understand Islam as well as to understand anything Islamic. The lesson that we are going to have today is the third one, Islamic framework for sociological thought and knowledge. I modify it a little bit as we go through the previous topic. So our class is class number 3, lesson number 3. Today is 19 of July 2021, and we have these simple items on the agenda for tonight's learning activities. I would like to start by having opening. There are two things on the items or on the agenda that I would like to address. Number one is I would like to give a response to some of what you have raised before. And this post that you wrote either in the survey questionnaire or in the chat room when we had our class for the last 2 weeks. And after that, I will have a little bit of revision by highlighting some points from the previous lecture, lecture number 2 or class number 2. As for the responses to the posts that you have posted in chat room and survey questionnaire, for tonight's class, I select 3. One is that there was a remark that lectures should be in easy language. I think as much as I can, I have been trying to be using the language that is easy. I think that is what I feel, but I do not know about you. I've been quite slow also in trying to make every point that I try to elaborate understood by you through this kind of communication. Of course, since English is not my mother tongue, there could be here and there some limitations in terms of what I can convey. But I think I have already used the language that is easy enough to be understood. The second request from the students, can you share slides, video, and reference materials? This appeared both in chat room and also in survey questionnaire. There are a few of this. Let me say this. My slides are developing from time to time, and I noticed the slides that I use during presentation sometimes contain mistakes as well. And after the class, normally I also keep improving it in order to make it more or to make it better. However, all this, the slide, the reference materials are all in the recorded video. And this recorded video have been posted and you can see that. So you can always review that. So you can get the information from this one source, the recorded video, where the slide and proposed reading materials are there. And sometimes, like last week, when I mentioned about the book, I think the book was also posted to you, the soft copy one that is on Tawheed, its importance, its implications for thought and life. As for there was one question, I think, in chat room. How is sociology relevant to policy making? So I think this question is relevant to be asked because we use science, all sciences, including social science like sociology, not only for understanding, but also for using that knowledge to improve life. And when we say that, that means we are trying to apply sociological knowledge, for example, in our life, one of which is to translate the theories, the concepts, and the ideas from sociology by making some policy making, by making some policies, social policies particularly. So I will illustrate this later on. So these are some of my responses to this question. However, you should not view my response or the answers and what you call this information that you need when you posted this question. I hope the responses and the answers are not only to be expected from my response, because I believe many of what you have raised can also be solicited from other subjects. When you look at these 7 subjects that are offered during this period, IIIT online classes series, I noticed that there are also other subjects which basically touch also on some of what either I have touched or I am touching or I will touch later. So some of what you have raised might have been more elaborated in other subjects. So while you have one question, but this question may be answered or the answer to this question may be found in other subjects as well. And sometimes the answer may be from this subject, but it will come later when we touch on the relevant lesson or topic. Let us look at how is sociology relevant to policy making. There are many ways how you can explain this, but I just want to share with you a very simple illustration here so that you can see the logic of using data, that is the scientific study of social reality, in order to be used for formulating whatever, either program or activities or even policy. Of course, at the higher level, the formulation of bigger policies like national policy, national social policies, for example, require more sophisticated study and analysis of the social aspect. So you can look at it later on, but what I'm trying to give you is just a simple illustration based on what we have done. So I have distributed a simple survey, and I have shown you part of the result, one of which is this one. For example, when I ask about your country of origin or where are you residing now, so I have got this data. So this data I have arranged in such a way to show me which country has most participants in this class. For example, here, by now, I think 211. Out of this 211, so we have 60 from Malaysia, Nigeria, and so on. So if we look at this one piece of information that has been systematized or organized, you can simply get the countries with a higher number of participants and the countries with lower number of participants. So if you stop at that point, then it will not give you any meaning because you only have knowledge and that's all. But how are you going to use this data in order to do more out of this data? The scientific data, that is the data that you collect from your survey. So let me show you a little bit, very simple. So if you look at this, I have classified the countries here. We find that our participants, based on 211 participants that who have responded to my questionnaire, 11 from Asia, 2 from Europe and all the West. One is, I think, from UK and one is from Canada. And then 10 from Africa, 1 Middle East, and 1 others. Others here because I cannot read one language. It was not written in English. So I simply cannot. So I put cannot understand that. So I put others. So altogether 25. So now from this one, then you have more sense of this information. You classify the data into several what you call this continents, from where they come, out of this 25. So if you look at the countries in the world, how many countries in the world? So maybe some says 195 and so on. So we have 195 countries. And these 195 countries, they are categorized into 7 continents. So these are 7 continents. But if you look at the, out of these 195 countries, you have 7 continents, and you can also look at Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the country, the 57 countries with more Muslims there. So you have this information in order to develop policies. So you can use this data in order to develop your own policy. Policy number 1, policy number 2, policy number 3. This is a very simple and simplified and also simplistic manner also. Of course, the more more sophisticated policy making process should involve collection of many data from many dimensions and make the modeling and make the prediction, and then only then you can have this. But what I'm trying to show you here, even with a simple data, you can use for that. So if you look at this one, for example, so if you look at the categories of continent here, you have only 4 continents or 5 continents. So 2 continents are not represented. Maybe your policy is that for the next class, you want to target having this one. So you can craft and develop certain policy which is related to the expansion or the participation from the other continents. You may also want to increase, let's say, participants from Middle East, because now you have only 1 from Saudi Arabia, and then Europe also. So that will give you some ideas as to how you can focus your resources as well as your energy in order to be directed towards achieving certain next targets of your, then you can formulate your policy 1, policy 2, policy 3. This is a very simplistic way of showing the logics of scientific study, scientific social study to the policy making process. So since sociology is defined as a scientific study of society, there is one definition. So the scientific aspects of sociology can be used for making policy in that sense. So that is one part of that. So for revision, I just want to be quick here because I have more slides to share with you tonight. Let us look at revision of the previous lesson, lesson number 2. Maybe I can summarize here by having takeaway, what you can take away for you as ideas. Number 1 is the concept of Tawheed, starting with the recognition of Allah as the creator and master of the universe, the ultimate one and absolute one, Allah's oneness, and also you can see out of that, or because of that, you have also other levels of unity, as I have shown you through the diagram. And then this is what they call is concretized in what we call Shahada, translated as testification, pronouncement, and declaration. That is takeaway number 1. Takeaway number 2 is the chart or the diagram that presents a big picture depicting the whole idea of existence or reality, covering all concerns in philosophical inquiry. So people talk about ontology, epistemology, zoology, metaphysics, and so on. So all these areas or branches of philosophy, they have their big questions. So these big questions are there to be answered here. So I will be using this one for elaborating our topic tonight, inshallah. And then takeaway number 3, regarding the Tawheed, we have mentioned about or summarized the principles of Tawheed, the one on the left of my side. You can see here that Tawheed is regarding the two orders, the order of the divine order and the created order. And then how do we know? We know through God's words, the kutub, the holy books, and also we know through the universe, law of nature. Here is where all sciences are relevant. Social sciences, natural sciences, the natural sciences like biology, chemistry, physics, and so on, and their branches are meant for investigating nature in order to know more about the laws governing the reality, so that it can bring us closer to God. And same thing applies when we are talking about studying social realities in the case of sociology, anthropology, and others. We also learn about the creation is purposive, has purpose. What exists is with purpose. Therefore, we need to discover the secrets and the wisdom behind the creation of this. And then man has ability to know, not only because man himself is equipped with potentials that allow him to be able to understand not only the book of Allah but also the nature. The nature itself is as such. It is created containing the consistent laws of nature created by God that are possible to be investigated, and that's why science can prevail. If there are no laws in this, it is haphazard, so nothing can be investigated because it's changed. But we know that this is not the case. And then we talk about accountability of man and so on. So in the term or in the language that is used by Al-Faruqi, it can be equated with duality, additionality, teleology, capacity of man and malleability of nature, responsibility and judgment. I hope the book that I propose you can read in that. So takeaway number 4 is based on the verse that I have mentioned, chapter 3, Ali Imran, verse 189 until verse 194. So from these verses, we can gather there are the 3 entities that we have discussed. One is God, the second is non-God. Non-God, first universe, and within universe we have man, and these are some of the examples how the Quran tells us about the status and role of man. Here, man is described as ulul albab, but the man can only be ulul albab only if he or she is what? They are yazkurun Allah. They remember God. They are always, whether they are standing or sitting or lying, they always remember God in one way or another. And then yatafakkaruna fi khalqi samawati wal ard. They always think about the creation of God. They look at they look up and then they remember God. They look at the tree, they remember God. They look at the animal, they remember God. So these are the characteristics of ulul albab. And then they also, the men, when they look at this, then they recognize God. Finally, or at the end of their this one, they end up with saying that Rabbana ma khalaqta hadha batilan subhanak and then faqina azabannar. So with the dua, so these are some of the dua from this. So this is just only one example that we can derive and classify the teachings of Islam related to our understanding of Tawheed. And finally, or the second last of the takeaway, is that as a conclusion, we can say that all realities can ultimately be reduced to one absolute reality, namely Allah, the only creator of all creatures. And therefore, we talk about Tawheed. Yeah. So finally, takeaway number 6, this is just, I think, the reference that you can use. So, so having taken some time for this highlights from second lesson, let us now move to the third lesson. And the third lesson is Islamic Framework for Sociological Thought and Knowledge. Now, we, from the perspective of Islam, yeah, as we have learned from the concept of Tawheed, even though we say in a very straightforward manner that there is no Islam without Tawheed, that is number one. Number two, there is nothing can be Islamic unless it is rooted in Tawheed. So these are the two statements which are important. But when we say this, it means also, of course, the source from which we understand this, that is the Quran. So when we talk about Islamic framework for sociological thought and knowledge, we are thinking about what will guide us to think about society. So this broad picture about the guiding principles, for example, the guiding concepts, which will enable us to think about society and develop knowledge of society that has Islamic orientation. So the Islamic oriented sociology will always be guided by, firstly, or rooted in Tawheed, but guided by the principles arising from the Tawheed. Yeah? So therefore, our lessons tonight, tonight has the following objectives and learning outcome. We try to understand the definition and concept of framework, what is framework and what is Islamic framework. And then we will familiarize the participants with the key concept that constitute the framework, and then to know the way this framework works in guiding Muslim sociological thinking and knowledge. So the questions that we will be answering, inshallah, what is the definition and concept of framework? What is Islamic framework? What are the key concepts that constitute the framework? And how does this framework work in guiding and shaping Muslim sociological thinking and knowledge? So of course, at the end of the lesson, we expect the students to be able to define and explain the concept of framework, and also to show their understanding of Islamic framework and describe the way Islamic framework works in guiding sociological thinking and knowledge. So these are the objectives and learning outcomes, as well as the main question that we are going to answer. Okay, so let us now begin. I know that one of the most challenging tasks for anybody is to try to make complex idea, complex thought, complex concept, complex theory understandable to the public using simple language. So that is why sometimes the complex subject like philosophy and so on, sometimes you don't really get many students because of this. Only when students realize the importance of philosophy, then they will go there. But compared to other subjects, for example, why? Because it is perceived, it is not necessarily true, but it is perceived to be quite difficult. So our task is to make the sophisticated philosophical issues, concerns, understandable in the way that we can feel and know the importance of the spirit and principle of philosophy. You don't have to be necessarily very what you call it, specialized in this, but we want to inherit the principle, spirit, and the main ideas behind philosophy. Philosophy is very, very important, and that's why we think it is necessary to be discussed. But to make philosophical issues and ideas appreciated, we need to make people understand. But understanding complicated issue is a very challenging task. That's why I have been trying to use some of the illustration in order to relate here and there the various aspects of issues that we discuss, so that you can see, at least as a big picture, where is the place of certain concept in the total picture or total diagram of philosophical inquiry. So far, we have touched on three important concepts: at-tawhid, concept of Islam, and concept of sociology. Now, let us try to relate that to our topic today. By now, we should be able to see and think that at-tawhid is actually the definer and shaper of all that is Islamic, including Islamic framework for sociological thought and knowledge. So it means the starting point for our discussion of Islamic framework is Tawhid. And we have most of the time discussed this before. So therefore, today is we are going to continue from there by connecting our lesson today to the last part of the Tawhid. Now, so let us look at this. So we have mentioned about Tawhid, but I simply didn't put you to more difficult situation at that time. But now I just want to say that we can conclude the Tawhid by bringing in what we call a Shahada. Of course, we begin with Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, but this phrase, La ilaha illallah, and there is no God but Allah, is very precise, very concise, and sometimes, according to Al-Faruqi, the whole culture, the whole society, the whole civilization can be expressed in this very precise term. Yeah. So, everything can be related to this. So, what takes place in Muslim society is actually expansion or expanded development from this. In all areas, when you talk about economics, for example, you talk about economic-based, Islamic-based economy without riba, economy without injustices, and so on. Same thing with education. We talk about the concept of integrated knowledge, the seeking of knowledge as ibadah, and so on. So all can be reduced finally to this. And in real life, a Muslim declare this. If we, for example, can divide into three. So this is what people call represented in our ibadah khasa. That is the special or specific. That indeed my prayer, one nusuki here, including all those the rest of arkan Islam, that is pillars of Islam, and other things which are considered to be rituals, and so on. So which are considered to be under specific worship or ibadah khasa. And this one, the entire life, which sometimes in the secular perspective, it is separated from the first one. As is in the framework of Islam, this is considered as ibadah, but ibadah ammah, Still ibadah or worship, but general worship. Mahya here, life, mamamat, death. And all these are lillahi rabbil alamin, only for the sake of Allah. So we have, for a Muslims, each of them declares that their prayer, their rites, or their rituals, their life, their entire life activities, their death, all these are actually only for the sake of Allah. Lillahi Rabbil Alameen. So this is very powerful statement that Muslim reads at the beginning of the Salat. So this, the declaration that he or she wants to make the entire life submissive to the Creator. So it is with this one, then we talk about knowledge. So let's say any science, it has, maybe we are talking about science as having substantive knowledge, the knowledge about that particular subject matter. Let's say we are talking about sociology, and then this is the subject matter is society, right? Society. So this is, but as we all know, all science has at least two parts: the substantive knowledge, the subject matter, and also all the technicalities regarding this and the understanding of this subject matter. And behind that, there is a thought. There is a thought side of the science, the knowledge side and the thought side. So we know that thought and knowledge communicates. They both communicate. Yeah. Whether it depends on how you want to look at it. There are times when thought influence knowledge or give impact to knowledge, and with knowledge we give us some ideas, and these ideas may enhance the thought, and that is how a science develops. So science of today may not be similar with science of tomorrow. So if you are talking about sociology of the previous time and sociology of the present time and sociology of the future time may be different because of the thoughts that develop in each period due to the change in the society and other factors as well. So, but what is most important for us to realize that when we talk about a science, like social science, like sociology, for example, we must realize that behind the standard subjects, the standard topics, themes that we study, we must look into the thought side, the what you call it, the ideas behind what we are learning. So human thought, I'm going to slowly connect to what we are talking about framework later. So the human thought, there are factors which might have influenced the human factor, or human thought. Of course, we recognize the fact that people have different opinions, different views, different understanding, and so on. Why? Partly because of it is the nature of human thinking, and as a rational creature, human has a capability to see things in different ways or in many ways. At the same time, they are exposed to different environment, or even in the same environment, but their socialization and life experience is not the same. So each of us is unique in our own way. There is no similarity. That is what we have to realize. And because of that, we can see the different levels of thought as well as different levels of knowledge. So I don't put here what are the levels, but I just want to show you examples of how people classify thinking and also knowledge. And from there, we are going to relate to what we call as ultimate thought, the ultimate thought. I already talk about this, but just to bring it back to connect to what we are going to discuss, that is Islamic framework. Yeah. Now, let us look at here. So we are talking about the hierarchy and levels of thought and knowledge. So if you look at the Bloom's taxonomy and so on, you will find this. Of course, I have taken from e-learning bunch here. I acknowledge this because I have taken from Google also to facilitate my teaching here. So you can see that even thinking has lower order thinking and higher order thinking. And there are different words and verbs used to describe these differences. So even the change of how this classification was made also took place. Why? Because that is how knowledge developed and thinking developed. This is as far as thinking is concerned. When it comes to knowledge, we are familiar with the hierarchy of knowledge, whereby knowledge is perceived to begin with a very simple thing, the data. You may imagine the data that I have collected last time by asking you this question and that question. So I have data set, a set of data that can give me information. And if I analyze further, formulate further, it can give me knowledge. And from there, if I develop further, the insights from there will create wisdom. Yeah. So this is how people look at the development of knowledge from a very simple facts develop into sophisticated understanding about the reality. So these are some of the illustrations for you to see that things can develop from a simple one to a more sophisticated one in order to facilitate humans in their life. So knowledge among humans is not the same. Even the levels are not the same. So this is what we need to understand. So as far as human knowledge is concerned, it is explained in this way in terms of the level of sophistication and so on. The question is that what is after this, right? What is, here is where we are talking about. Let's say if you take this to be your acceptable conclusion from scientific investigation of knowledge reality, and you come up with this one. What is next after that? Here is where we are talking about revelation. I mean, this is my way of looking at it, because many of the scientific studies are not able to go abroad, over this one. So this is what I am trying to investigate when I talk about, when I try to define Islamic framework and sociological thought. Let us begin with a simple approach where we divide into two. One is Islamic framework, the other one is sociological thought. These are the two key phrases or words under which we can divide further Islamic and framework, and the other side, sociology and thought. Right? Now, as I said, how to make things understandable. So I do not want to define straight away. Let us look at this. What is a framework? So I will not go through a typical way of giving people or students definition, but I normally in my class, undergraduate class, I train them to think. So I think thinking is very important instead of just taking from what we give to them. Because what we give, they may not think how the one that we give is developed. But if we train them to think, so one thing that they get is thinking skill. So let us look at this. I believe everyone knows, but since the time is limited, otherwise I would like to exercise or to do exercise like what I did for my undergraduate students and so on. We had a number of exercises in the class. So these are trees. If you look at these trees, and if I ask you to describe the trees, I believe you have many descriptions. Yeah? You have many descriptions. So the nice tree, the colors are this, and then the grass under the trees, and so on. Some trees have these fruits, very beautiful. All these are the description that we have. And same thing when we look at building. This is the Twin Tower in Kuala Lumpur. Very nice, very modern, and so on. These are the typical description that we have. And I have tested this. All that they have given me, all this description based on what they can see. But if you look further, actually, even though what we look is the outside or the what is apparent to our naked eyes, the immediate thing that appear to our eyes, the upper part of this, not realizing that beneath that, this is also part of the tree. But we almost forget this. We know it exists, but we almost forget this. But we concentrate on this only. So our description is what it appears to our eyes. Same thing with sociology. We study what appears to our eyes. That is why when we define, or when some people define sociology as scientific understanding of society, they are talking about things which can be measured, things which can be counted, things which can be observed and quantified. Yeah, but things which cannot be seen, like this one, is not counted because it cannot be seen, right? So this is, and then same thing with, so if you look at this is the structure. Now we come to this, a framework like a structure. Like a structure. We look at the tree first, and then we describe that, but actually the tree has structure. Same thing with the building. Building also has the structure. What we see is this part. But this part we don't see. So I think you can see also, this is I take from Kenson Dunlop. Thank you for this one. So you see, this is what we can see, and then this we cannot see. So when we enter certain compound, we see the building. If the building is nice, we say, oh, very amazing, and so on. But behind the beauty of this building, actually, there is something that is very important, but it is neglected. Yeah. So all this. So now, therefore, a framework is a structure that makes things seen or operated within the boundaries of that structure. We must imagine a framework as a structure. And then it has various components with different level. The most important component of the structure forms the basis upon which other parts are built. Despite its importance, this important component, like the root, like the foundation of the building, is the most neglected one because of its being lofty, being elusive, being abstract, and being unseen. So in the structure, the unseen part of that structure is the most important part. But this is the most neglected one because it cannot be seen. So same thing, the concept of God, the concept of what you call is the concepts that are considered to be unmeasurable, for example, or cannot be seen, these are important, but they are neglected because they cannot be tested, they cannot be seen in the way that people operate scientific investigation. So scientific way must be redefined in order to relate to this, how it can be done, right? So when you search framework in internet, these are some of the images that appear depicting the description of framework. But I want to use really the frame, that is a photo frame. And within the photo frame, we are going to talk about human. So understanding of human within this frame. So this is one layer, this is second layer, third layer, fourth layer, right? So how all this, the understanding of human society and within this frame, this is what I mean. So therefore, the question, using such analogy, what can be regarded as the components of Islamic framework? What is the most important components of this framework? What is the status and role of each component within this framework? These are some of the questions that we are going to answer in 6 minutes, inshallah, because we have left with 6 minutes. So in order to elaborate that, let us look at what we have presented last week. So I bring back this diagram. So you see this is God, concept of God, all right? And then we have concept of universe, concept of man, yeah? And then concept of, this is unity of thoughts. This is where, so the man, and then we are talking about knowledge now. So these are the three important concepts that constitute Islamic worldview or constitute worldview. There are big questions about God. There are big questions about universe. There are big questions about man. So when this question, there are a few questions, are answered through the Quran, automatically this form Quranic answers. And the collection of all these Quranic answers to God's issues, man issues, universe issues form what we call Islamic worldview, right? And we have another concept, that is concept of knowledge, right? So now, these are the four concepts that constitute Islamic framework for thinking. And so when we say Islamic framework, the framework that is structured, and the structure consists of Islamic worldview, Islamic epistemology, and also Islamic methodology. And we have the subject matter as I have mentioned to you. So if you want to use another illustration, we can use this God in the middle, and then we have the concept of universe. This is the first concept, second concept, third concept, and fourth concept. So if you want to discuss man, you put man in the middle, for example, right? This now changed, not because man is the central thing is God in the middle. So all knowledge is to be understood in relation to God. Universe needs to be understood in relation to God. And so therefore God is at the center of everything. But now man as the subject matter, so it needs to be understood within the Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology. So this is the man needs to be understood. This is epistemology, and then in the light of what God says, and then how we define universe. So knowledge, therefore, if you put knowledge, let's say we are talking about sociology here. So sociology needs to be understood in the context of Islamic concept of God, Islamic concept of man, and Islamic concept of universe. So we do think. The question is how to develop a science of sociology with Islamic orientations, whatever you want to term it. Islamic perspective of sociology, or sociology of Islam, or a sociological knowledge with Islamic input, or even Islamic sociology, how to develop that kind of science. What is the answer? Then the answer should be by studying the various aspects of human society in the light of or guided by Tawhidic worldview, Tawhidic epistemology, Tawhidic methodology. Yeah. So that is basically what we need to do. But how to do it? So I think we need to attend 3 more or 4 more classes in order to eventually develop that kind of understanding about sociology with Islamic orientation or with Islamic input. So I think that is all for today. As the closing part, further learning, I would like you to read this or to watch video. One is Islamic Epistemology by Sheikh Omar Baloch, where it mentions and explains Islamic epistemology, where you can see the 2 kinds of knowledge, revealed knowledge and acquired knowledge. And he also explains the place of sociology in the scheme of sciences or knowledge. That is the purpose of watching this one. And the second one is by Omar also. So we have 2 Omars. One is Omar Baro, and then the other one is Omar Hassan Kasuli. Also talking about Islamic epistemology, but this time is how Islamic epistemology and Islamic thought are explained. So I hope if you see this, then you will be able to understand more about the connection between Islamic worldview, Islamic epistemology, and the science any science that we are talking about. In which case, in our case, we are talking about science of society or sociology. I think that is all for tonight. Now it's already 10:30. I think I have concluded that quite within the time. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Prof. As usual, we learned so much from the presentation. In the beginning, you explained very well about the relationship between sociology and public policy. Of course, without understanding the dynamic of the society, impossible to make a sound public policy. You explained very clearly about the diagram of need, hierarchy of needs, and then you discuss about the framework. I think after the 7 classes, we have to ask you for the 8th class for question and answers only, because we don't have enough time. We purposely make it 1 hour, inshallah. So thank you so much, Prof. See you next week, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.